I did the practice stream on, what was it? I got to town on Thursday, so we should be good.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, it's been a long day. You know, I put the link to this show on my Facebook page, and it had the correct time, and I think the same was true for the post I put on AA Roads, but I never actually changed the start time for the YouTube event, so my apologies for not catching that. We started at 6 Central, not 6 Eastern, because I am still in the Central time zone. It's been a week since we last spoke, and I was in Amarillo, Texas, and tonight I am just about a diagonal to the east in Arlington, Texas.
Yeah, deep in the heart of Texas.
Oh boy, yeah, I've had my fill of Texas on this trip.
Yeah.
It's all those left turns at Albuquerque.
You know, I can understand why Bugs would get confused at the Big I. There's a lot going on there.
Yes.
And seeing how people drive there, I think he's not the only one who gets confused. I no joke, when I was in Albuquerque, I had to refilm that stretch of I-25 because this sumbitch almost crashed into my car trying to weave across 4 lanes of traffic, trying to make the ramp to I-40. So, if you're out there, son, you know, read a map before you leave the house, okay?
Good advice. Nobody takes it anyway.
No, nobody listens. You know, nobody listens to me. I don't know why, but you know, I have a decent amount of creative things to say every once in a while.
Semi-creative.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting to get this episode pulled up on my phone so I can keep track of the live chat. Because that's usually what I like to do. I like to stream live on the laptop, which I've got, and then I have the stream open on my phone so I can keep track of chat comments and all that stuff. So I suppose I am doubly viewing this stream.
Yeah. So normally what I'll do is I will have one basically on my computer, but I'll also have it on my TV as well.
Yeah, so that's the way to do it. I mean, when I watch my videos at home, like after a trip or when I'm prepping them for upload and whatnot, they look really good on that 54-inch TV I got.
Yeah.
So
I mean, my TV isn't quite as big, but
you gotta watch
it still does the job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of which,
all right, we're here to talk about a couple of circular highways in mid-America tonight, for Kansas City and the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. Tonight I've got Doug with me from Gribble Nation.
Word.
And I've got Scott Sconson with us again. Hi, Sconson.
Excelsior.
Yeah, see, there you go. You're learning the New York lingo.
Well, that is our state motto, so.
It is.
We're upward.
He came prepared tonight. He's doing the show with a couple of New Yorkers. He's got to know the right lingo. All right. So as I said in my my opening here, as we fired up the stream for the night, I am in Arlington, Texas, after I was broadcasting to you in Amarillo last week. And in those 7 days that have transpired since then, lots happened. I added a new top 50 city by population in Albuquerque, New Mexico. A really interesting city in its own right, culturally, and the roads aren't too bad either. It's one of 2 locations in the whole state of New Mexico where 2 interstate highways intersect. And they are here, 40 and 25, right off of downtown. So Albuquerque was the focus of some new footage that I got earlier this week. I would say the other nominee for favorite moment the last week was completing Interstate 40 all the way out to California. It ends out in Barstow, out in the Mojave Desert.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it once you pass Needles, it's like the middle of nowhere for 2 hours, and it was a white knuckle drive on this day because the winds were just howling on this day, and there was dust in the air at times, so that the visibility wasn't that great, but it was interesting, and I had to get a picture of that Wilmington, North Carolina sign at the East.
I have to say that you were coming up on the rest area that had the phone water at it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, there's the rest area every once in a while, and then there's basically nothing. Like I think you go at least 50 miles at a time without any services.
Right.
There.
It was about halfway between Barstow and Needles, I think. I remember seeing that, at least in the eastbound direction. I haven't gone in the westbound direction on 40, just on 10.
Yeah, the California is probably the only state of I-40 that I haven't been on yet. I took it out to Kingman, then went up to Vegas from there, then down 15. And then across from Barstow, I went across on 58 out to Bakersfield, which some people think it should be part of I-40, but I don't think it's going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
The future I-40.
Yeah.
I've only got a couple segments left, and they are between Raleigh and Wilmington, and between Fort Smith and Oklahoma City.
Yeah, so I now have I-40 done west of Nashville. I'm missing between Nashville and Knoxville, and then between Asheville, North Carolina, and Statesville, which is I-77.
Yeah,
much left.
No, not much.
In either spot.
I got the furthest stuff done, so.
I'd say the only transcontinental the only transcontinental interstate I have clinched is I-90. I'm not missing much of I-80 or I-70. Basically, I-70, I just need like west of Salina, Utah, which is like the last 50 miles.
Yeah.
So I wound up taking 50 across from there. And then 80 I need between Reno and Winnemucca, Nevada, and then some bits and pieces in California.
Between Nevada and Cheyenne minus Salt Lake City for 80 for me, and then I got 70 and 90 and 94 done. I got a good chunk of 10 done, but still got quite a bit to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
especially in Texas, East Texas, Mississippi, and a little bit in Florida. Yeah. That's the only left. That's the only part in Florida I have left. If I have Florida done. All right, I'll shut up now.
Yeah. While you were in New Mexico, did you have a green chili cheeseburger?
I did, actually.
Yeah, they're pretty good, aren't they?
They're very tasty. Yeah.
Yes.
That's one of those things that I kind of wish they had in New York. So.
Yeah. Well, you can get a. Well, I guess you can cheap out and basically get a basically a burger and then just put like green chilies from a can in it. That's, I guess, the only way you can really do it out here.
Yeah, that's not the same. Though.
Not the same.
They gotta be fresh chilies, though.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Hatch chilies.
Isn't New Mexico calls themselves the chili capital of the world, don't they? Or someplace out there does.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So they got plenty of leftover ones that they gotta get rid of. So they just put them on burgers, and it tastes amazing.
Of course, we'll be talking about places that have excellent barbecue, Kansas City, and then Minnesota has hot dish, which is another word for casserole.
I'm going to ask you about that later when we come to it.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, Doug, what do you got on Gribble Nation right now?
Well, I was a busy beaver today. I uploaded a article on Oregon State Road 86, which is in northeastern Oregon in Baker County. It goes from Hell's Canyon over to the Baker City, and here's a link for that. I also just finished it just before coming on here, an article on the Malone Covered Bridge in New Brunswick. I only have a few more New Brunswick covered bridge articles to write about. I will need to go there again sometime and visit more of the covered bridges, but coming up soon you'll also see an article on the Heartland Covered Bridge, which I still need to work on, which is the world's longest covered bridge. And then finally, we have an article. I just actually uploaded a podcast just about a little while ago regarding Washington State and US 2. And I'm actually just pulling up the link for that now. So, you have a little podcast action as well. So, Dan can be entertained for 40 minutes.
Yeah, I could use something new to listen to.
Yeah. You can hear me blabber on about a highway in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, that's all right. That's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
For your information, we have done an episode. We did one last year. We did a webinar on Kansas City. So if you'd like to learn more about the roads of that metro area, I encourage you to check out that episode, which you can find under the webinars playlist on my homepage. There is another episode coming soon for Minneapolis St. Paul content, and it's actually going to be next week. We're going to do a virtual road meet / webinar show next Saturday that will feature the Twin Cities. So we're going to talk a lot about the loop around the Twin Cities tonight, but for the rest of the content of that metro area, I encourage you to join us next week. And both of these shows will be
start
available.
Is at when?
I have to talk to you guys off the air about that. Just because I think we were going to go with 12 noon because that's what we've done in the past, but I'll talk to you guys.
Oops.
All right. Leading off tonight, let's take a lap around 435, which is the loop encircling Kansas City. Here we have it on the map here. Tonight's video is going to run in the, I guess you would call it the counterclockwise direction, basically starting near the top, near where that red pin is in the top left of the loop, and then we'll run in a counterclockwise circle down and through the Kansas side, and then back into Missouri in that direction. All right, and then here's my obligatory reminder for what we have coming up next week. As I said, it's the Twin Cities virtual road meet / webinar extravaganza. And I actually will be home in New York for this. So I will be in the Eastern time zone again. I'm coming home just so I can do this show. Aren't you guys lucky?
Ooh. Ah.
Yay!
Okay. All right, let's see. So the 435 loop is... All right, this is muted, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right, ready, set, go. So this video is 66 minutes long, and it will take us that amount of time to do a lap around the Kansas City Loop, which is about 83 miles in all. It's one of the longer interstate highway loops in America. I think the only one that beats it on the interstate system right now is the one around Cincinnati, I-275.
That is correct.
Although if Oklahoma gets their way, then 240 will have both of them beat by a few miles, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know the loop around Greensville they just finished the last part of that too, but don't think that's quite as long.
No, in fact, there's some foreign highways that are longer than that. I mean, there's a couple in Beijing that are longer. The M25 in London
England,
is also longer than that.
Yeah, the one of my bucket list roads to clinch is the M25 around London.
Oh, Beltway 8 is also bigger.
Yeah, if we want to go off the interstate system, Beltway 8 is longer.
Yeah.
Beltway 8 / Sam Houston Tollway.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know that they're ever going to actually finish the Grand Parkway, but that one would be a lot larger than Beltway 8. But
we'll see. It's if they're going to do it, they probably have to have text tags tolls on it, too, so for a while.
Yeah, the issue with there's one particular section of the Grand Parkway that is going to be a real pain in the butt to build if they ever get around to it. But if any state could do it, it would be Texas.
It is Texas.
Everything's bigger than Texas.
Yeah.
Well, everything is bigger in Texas, so yeah.
Yeah. This is Texas. As he sits in a hotel in Texas.
I've gotten to see all the stack interchanges that the state has to offer, or just about most of them.
Yeah,
that's a lot. That's about 100% more interchanges and our stacks than Minnesota has.
Yeah,
and Illinois, should I say too?
Well, yeah, most states, right? I mean, Texas builds 4 or 5 level interchanges just for the fun of it.
Oh yeah.
Whereas in any other state, it's a big deal.
Right now, around me, Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota have nothing greater than 3. And in fact, I don't think Minnesota has anything greater than 2 stacks. That's going to change in Iowa in a few years because the East Mixmaster is going to be a stack, be rebuilt as a stack.
What is the East Mixmaster?
In Des Moines, 35 at the east end of 235.
They're going to build that as a stack, really?
They are, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Build it.
Nice.
We'll get to the Minnesota ones when we get onto that belt, but
not so fast, young man. Let's talk about.
We'll talk about Kansas City now.
Yeah.
I would like to throw one.
This is a lengthy one here, and thankfully, right now we don't have to worry about anything but St. Joseph.
Yep. And of course, when we're on 435, we'll be, speaking of doing a lap around a city, we'll be passing near the Kansas Speedway.
Yeah. You're not doing a lap around the city. You're just doing a lap around a green grass spot with all pit stops.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, 435 passes right near there, so.
That is one of my lists, one of my items that I'd love to do someday. Just get in a race car on a track and do a few laps.
Didn't you do that? Didn't you do that already in Watkins Glen?
Well, okay, so did I get to drive a few laps on the course? Yes, but it had to be at a set pace behind the pace car. So it's not the same thing as getting up and doing a few hot laps. Although I was still driving my old Toyota Matrix at the time, and I tell you, I could get that thing to hit triple digits if I had to. So I could have done it.
Yep.
There is a question in the live chat for you, Dan. Maybe it's still off topic, but it's pertinent. You've done the Kansas and Oklahoma turnpikes. What transponder set did you use?
it would have been whatever came with my rental car for Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yeah, so I rented a car for that trip out of Tulsa. Well, actually, I had a few different cars on that trip. What am I talking about?
Right.
I had 2 cars from Tulsa, and I had one from Oklahoma City. So, and they both had like the toll tag already in them. I believe I believe all those cars had pike passes.
They probably charge you extra for that because of the rental car having its take.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't have all those tags. I don't have my own account for that stuff. So, it's one of those deals where I know I'm gonna drive those roads once, and that's it. So I'll just pay and be done with it. As far as Kansas is concerned, that was another rental car situation there. I think that one had a K tag in it.
Probably.
Yeah.
I got a K-Tag candy bar, but they discontinued distributing those.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I only have an Easy Pass, although I know some of our friends have multiple transponders for every situation.
Oh yeah. I got an iPass, I got a Sun
people.
Pass, and I got a K-Tag. So, and I haven't used the K-Tag yet.
Yeah. I was debating getting a Good to Go pass, which is what they use up in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. They do have one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't they come up with that because of the Alaskan Way Tunnel?
Yeah.
Or did they already have something like that? Because I don't remember that being a thing until recently.
Yeah, I think that well, they have the Alaskan Way, and around the same time they added the 405 express lanes and 520. The bridge over Lake Washington.
Right, yeah.
Is toll now. Of course, Tacoma Narrows.
Yep, yeah, that's the other one. I know, all this talk about tolls.
I'd rather talk about pancakes.
All right,
I mean, that is the only stack that Bob is interested in.
Oh.
Of course, being that you've been in Texas, you probably had a Waffle House visit or two.
I actually haven't. I have not been to a Waffle House yet on this trip.
You have been to a Waffle House, period, right?
Oh, yeah. But I usually work that into my daily schedule when I'm on these trips down south. But I haven't had the chance to do that yet.
Yeah, so last time I went to Waffle House was actually on my way to the Philly meet. I stopped at the one in Clark Summit on the way down.
Okay, yeah. I think that one is the closest one to both of us, right?
Yeah,
It's like the furthest north and east.
Yeah, I mean, it's right, down I-84 for you, and for me it's, about a hair under 3 hours.
Yeah.
Last time I was at a Waffle House was actually on the first of the year, second of the year last year, outside Bel Air.
Yeah, I stopped one there near my hotel.
Mm-hmm.
It is good for a quick meal.
Oh yeah,
it is quick,
and it's affordable.
Yes.
I wouldn't have it every day, but it is good and affordable. And the thing with Waffle Houses is you get people from all walks of life going there, and that's the great thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is an interesting spot,
Yeah.
I just the only reason that I like to visit Laura every once in a while is because there's a Waffle House near where she lives. So
that's exactly to the one that I went to.
But the one in Bel Air off 95, right?
Not off. Actually, it wasn't off 95. It was off US 1.
Oh, and then maybe we're thinking of a different one then. Okay.
Yeah, it's the one I stopped. It was right off of 95.
Oh, so there must be two.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you are south.
It doesn't surprise me. It's south enough. It's south enough to be in the area that has lots of Waffle Houses.
Yeah. Well, you are south of the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think Maryland was the first place I ever encountered a Waffle House, or at least a sign for a Waffle House years ago.
I'd be interesting to say, but The place that I saw first time for the Waffle House was actually in Carbondale, Illinois in 2014. So it's like I hadn't even thought about, much less heard about Waffle Houses until then. And it's like after that, it's like, okay, new thing for my bucket list.
And I think the furthest north Waffle House I've been to was in Toledo. That might be further north than Scranton. I don't know.
No, it ain't. It's about the same. Approximately.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's actually talk about 435 for a moment here.
Do you want to actually talk about 435?
Yeah, why don't we?
Yeah, briefly.
Okay.
Then we can go talk about food, which is probably more interesting.
Well, I guess it's more interesting, at least in this area, yeah.
Yeah, so I-435 was built piece by piece starting in the mid-1960s, but not finished until 1987. The first segment that was built and opened was near Overland Park, Kansas. And then basically from there, then they built a section between I-70 and US 50 in eastern Kansas City. The two parts were not connected right away either. So basically they started building a section. So basically through southern eastern Kansas City, it was built by 1969. And then it looks like the northern part was one of the last sections that they built.
Yep. I posted a link to a list of historic maps that Kansas.dot has in the chat. And you can pretty much just see how all the highways have been built, including 435, as it comes from the southwest over to the northeast, and then finally to the west and north.
Yeah, the thing about the loop is that it was not originally planned as a loop. It ended up being one in the end. But I think that the eastern and southernmost sections, like from Overland Park on eastward out towards Lee Summit and then curling back north to I-35, like that was the original bypass. And
yeah,
then,
we're going to probably use 635 as the other side, but
yeah. And so if you look at old planning maps from the 50s and 60s, what's now I-635 was labeled as part of the same circumferential highway that 435 is. So their original thinking was that this loop that 635 would serve as that western component. As suburbia made its way further out west into the Kansas side of the metro, it started to make more sense to serve that area with a north-south highway, and that ended up getting incorporated into the Overland Park section of the loop. That became 435.
As we're crossing over the Missouri River here, I did notice that they have a project that they just completed, as you noticed, in a couple years back in a couple years. They rebuilt this bridge practically, and over the last couple of years too. Over the last 2 years between 2021 and 2020, back then. So I posted a link to the project page that's on MoDOT's site. It's still there.
I would like to congratulate Wisconsin at this point for being promoted to the level of moderator so that now he can spam the live chat with all the links that he desires.
Yes.
Within reason, of course.
Yes.
I don't think we want to be putting light links to anything that doesn't have to do with 435 or Minneapolis for today.
Right.
I mean, you're a moderator. You do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like you can post a link and say, "Hey, folks, click on my butt."
Let's be nice here, please.
You have great power, so you can do whatever you want with it.
But with great power comes great responsibility.
Well, not
Truth.
for road geeks.
Maybe not for you.
A lot of them don't know what to do with it.
Anyway, moving forward. But now we're in Kansas now that we crossed the river.
Yes,
Yay,
on
Kansas.
the Leavenworth prison side of the river.
Oh, yeah. No, we'll just keep going. No hitchhikers, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they actually go 70 on this side.
Leavenworth is a pretty famous prison, for those who don't know. And
I think there's a military base there, too, Fort Leavenworth.
is there? Okay. And there have been some pretty famous inmates at Leavenworth, haven't there?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I
I
don't know
would
off the
imagine.
top of my head, but I've heard that name for many, many years. And so it's obviously something that's, quintessential American prisons or whatever you want to call it.
Well, I was on a prison bus once, and hear me out. So up near Saratoga. Yep. So up near Saratoga Springs, you have Saratoga Springs, New York. You have Grant Cottage, which is where Ulysses S. Grant wrote his memoir. He was staying at a friend's. He wrote his memoir, and years ago it became the prison where Mount McGregor. It's now a closed prison, but it later became a prison because there was a resort nearby, and they turned into a prison. I went to visit Grant Cottage back in, I think it was like 2007 or so, and at the time the prison was still open. So you drive up the road to visit Grant Cottage, and you had to stop at a checkpoint. You had to park. And then the guard escorted you up to Grant Cottage in a prison van. And let me tell you, those are the most uncomfortable vans ever. No leg.
God.
So if there's any return to crime, that's it.
Oh, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they probably kept everybody in tolerant during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, so, but for as Leavenworths go, I prefer Leavenworth, Washington. It is a Bavarian town. Well, it's designed to look like a Bavarian town, complete with many German restaurants.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I know in Kansas, further west, near Salina, there's a town. There's a Minneapolis, Kansas, north of Salina, but south of Salina, there's a Swedish-themed town called Lindsborg. That's what you get from me.
All right.
Coming up shortly on I-70 here,
This is
a.k.a. the Kansas Turnpike to west.
Yeah.
And, of course, the Kansas Speedway is right where 435 and 70 meet on the Kansas side of the, of the Kansas City Metro. On the Missouri side of the Kansas City Metro, near the junction between 435 and 70, that's where the Chiefs and the Royals play.
Yeah, the good old Truman Sports Complex. Yep.
Yeah. Truman Sports Complex. I believe that's what you said.
I think that's what it's called officially.
It is.
I don't think that anybody ever actually calls it that, but I think that's its name.
Well, Harry Truman is, from the area, so.
Yes, he is.
Yes, and I actually went to his house once.
Yeah, it's out in that part of Missouri,
Independence,
isn't it?
yeah.
Independence, yeah.
Yeah, so what happened there is that the Harry Truman house looks the exact same way as it did when his wife Bess Truman passed away, I think in 1983. So it looks exactly like that.
Yeah.
And you can go visit, and they show you around the first floor. It's a modest house. He was of presidents. He was pretty modest. He actually, I think, at least in more modern times, he was one of the less wealthy presidents too. So he didn't have quite as much money. So actually, my understanding is that the federal government, they wanted to make sure that he had a good post presidency, so they basically made sure that Harry and his wife Bess Truman were well cared for.
Yeah.
Yep. So you have that, and I know that we are still on the Kansas side of the river. So after I-70, then you'll soon cross the Kansas River, which actually goes past Lawrence and Topeka and Manhattan. Of course, Lawrence and Manhattan are where University of Kansas and Kansas State University are located.
Yep.
So that's kind of an important river, at least in Kansas.
And it goes through the capital, Topeka.
Topeka, yeah, and it goes past Fort Riley, which is another military base, and then it just kind of peters out from there.
Yeah, I think and it's important to mention at this point that the settlement that became known as Kansas City was founded at the confluence of the Kansas and Missouri rivers.
Yes.
Just a few miles east of where we are in this video.
Yep. And of course, in Kansas City, there's a famous song by Wilbert Harrison, Kansas City. It's like, I'm going to Kansas City, here I come.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of quoting that earlier in the chat.
Yeah, because some people might not know what the hell you were talking about, but...
Yeah. Well, I saw Kansas City, Here I Come, so I had to reply with lyrics from the song.
Of course.
Beltways science stations on Kansas side here. Apparently, they just stuck the arrow right underneath that road name. Unlike some other places that I know, Wisconsin.
Yeah, because Wisconsin does everything absolutely perfectly, right?
They try to.
Everything. They do everything perfectly to your liking, right?
I don't know if it's exactly to my liking, but to be honest, I could care less.
You've graduated to I don't give a bleep.
Exactly.
Okay. See, I hope to get there someday.
Zero bleeps given.
Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm working
Zero
on it,
bleeps
though.
to give.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We are clean here.
Yeah. So from there, I know that Wisconsin, of course, as I said, things in Wisconsin to my liking include the New Glarus beer. I could go for a spotted cow, but there'll be a long drive for me to get one. So.
Yeah, for those that are wondering, you cannot buy the New Glarus beer outside of the state of Wisconsin. It's not.
And they prominently put it on their packaging too.
Exactly.
What do they put on the packaging? You can't.
Basically they put it only in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Which, of course, I've done trips. There was a trip I made out to Iowa. Idiots out wandering around in 2019, and I actually detoured from, I think it was Galena, Illinois, on my drive out on 20 into Wisconsin just to buy some New Glarus beer, and then
you probably stopped in Hazel Green then.
Yeah, at some convenience store in Hazel Green.
Yeah, you did to let me know because you were in my 50-mile radius.
Yeah.
For those that are wondering, yes, I'm in that area.
Here. Yeah. What? Why didn't you tell me?
I wouldn't care anyway.
Because I don't want to see you. Now buzz off.
Or usually if I'm in a week-long trip, it's a lot of it is I'm basically trying to cram everything into a set time frame. So exactly. I like seeing people, but it's not always. It doesn't always work out.
Yeah, I mean, if the situation is right, I wouldn't mind meeting up with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just kind of like, I go on these trips to collect footage, so it's that's kind of where my priorities
We all have
are.
our purposes for doing trips, and if socializing is not part of it, that's I say that's your choices, and it doesn't really bother me. So
Yeah. It's like things I like doing on like trips is basically seeing everything I possibly can. So basically I know that like during like let's say like a trip, let's say if I make it let's say June, I might be starting my drive at 5 in the morning and not wrapping up until like 9 o'clock at night when I can grab something quick to eat and then basically take a nap and start it all over again the next day.
That's basically the habit that I got into when I was out in Washington and Oregon in early July, because that's how long the days are. And you can, you can be up at 5. I think sunrise is at like 5:30 or something like that, and then it doesn't set until after 9.
Yep.
So, you can make some progress every day. I've had a few 1,000-mile days, out in that part of the country in the summertime.
Yeah, I haven't made it that far, but it's obvious. But I didn't have it driving all the time. But you could say like 500 or 600 miles is probably my limit.
Yeah, I've done.
Especially when you reach Portland and you reach the traffic.
Yeah, and I know that like when I go on a long trip, basically, let's say if I fly somewhere, the first thing I do when first thing I'm doing when I land, let's say at the airport after getting my rental car and all that fun stuff, is I'm finding the nearest supermarket and picking up provisions because that'll save me a lot of time later during the trip.
Next interchange, we're coming up on 95th Street. Then we're coming up on what seems to be a freeway that goes into Lawrence. K10.
Oh, K10, yeah. I've been on K10.
Yep. That will be the next one, and then we turn east at that interchange.
Yep, and this is where the 0 mile post is on 435, right at the 35 junction here.
Yeah, and we'll be over near Overland Park, which I think that used to be the headquarters of the NCAA.
It used to be, and now it's in Indianapolis.
It's in Indianapolis, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, they just headed east on 70.
Okay.
And look, 435 turns up. No, wait, that's the exit tab on the right.
Yeah, so the exit number is reset here at the mile 0 post. A quick note about K10, because we passed it a few seconds ago. That's actually a popular shunpiking route between Kansas City and Lawrence. It's a freeway for most of the way out there. And so people will... That road actually gets a lot of traffic because of the shunpiking.
Looks like
it
ends at... It looks like it intersects US 40, which goes south and west on a belt to I-70, which puts you on a turnpike. And you can obviously keep on I-40 to get US 40 to go around that to K4 to Topeka in order to stay around I-70.
Yep.
If you want to turnpike the Kansas Turnpike to the south and west, take I-35 and US 50.
Yeah, so the turnpike is easily shunpikeable between KC and Topeka, which is the busiest part of it, I believe.
Yeah.
And I've been on that a few times, and maybe it was the time of the day that I went, but it wasn't super busy. But it is still probably the busiest part because you have everyone who's driving across on 70.
And you got now the parent round of the 435 coming up. 35. Or did we pass that already?
Yeah, we passed that already.
Damn, we missed the big one. Let's go back. No, I'm just kidding.
I think you pointed it out with the resetting of the the 0 mile marker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But now we come up on 69 here. Nice.
Nice.
US 69, another important freeway corridor in the Overland Park area. I believe there's a project that I think it's underway currently to build tolled express lanes along the 69 freeway.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. So that would be the first set of those kinds of lanes in Kansas.
Well, if the I-435 South Loop Link Design Build Project, which maybe Scott linked to it further up screen, I'd have to look. But yeah, that's basically it's for I-435 in the Missouri side of things. So from there.
This is a pretty big interchange, to say the least. I mean, they got the through ramp going east to south, and then they got that overhead to the from south to west. Are we stuck?
No, I'm here.
Okay. And according to my map I'm looking at, it's traffic.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So other things along, I was noticing as I was looking along 435, basically Kansas City has a lot of museums. That seems to be a real big thing, with the area. So I was seeing like the looks like it was the Wonderland Museum along 435. So they're the Wonderscope Museum. So you have that. It's actually a little bit further to the south. And then another thing is you have there's a park that's about a mile south of 435 along the Blue River, which is actually, starts in Kansas City, then works its way into Kansas. And they have a old red bridge where everyone likes to put on their locks.
Lock the fence.
Yes. And yes, there will be a webinar on the Twin Cities freeways next week, as Scott had mentioned. And I think that was something that we were looking at further along.
Yeah, usually when
the channel as well.
Yeah, I mean we'll kind of preview some of that later, but usually I do these webinars before I do these virtual shows, just because I think that it works a little bit better as far as the sequencing is concerned. Yeah. But I don't know, that's just the way that things shook out this time around. But yeah, I believe that the section that we're on right now, as we head through Overland Park and head towards the state line, this is the busiest section of 435 as far as daily traffic. Yeah.
You'll see it's 4 lanes each way now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were there, it had a little. I could say this is light traffic here.
Yeah, well, one of my golden rules when I'm visiting there on holiday weekends. So that's how I'm able to skip a lot of the traffic.
Yeah, because all the traffic was like me and went to the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I've done some of that too, where I've went to. One thing I should have done when I was in Minneapolis was go to the state fair.
Oh, were you in town during the state fair?
Yeah, it's the end of August and ends Labor Day weekend. It's on the same schedule as the New York State Fair.
Oh, all right.
Of course, I wanted to explore other places around the Twin Cities too, so I didn't quite make it to the state fair. Maybe the next time.
Yeah, wasn't somebody planning a meet in Minneapolis around the state fair? Wasn't that one of Patrick's projects?
I think so. That was something he was looking at because it is one of the biggest state fairs in the country. So yeah.
Yeah, it's up there. I know that here in Dallas, they pride themselves on the Texas State Fair, and that's always a big event.
Yeah. Yeah, that's at the Cotton Bowl.
Yep.
Which the NHL, they had their Winter Classic in Dallas a few years ago. Might have been right before the pandemic started, and it was between the Dallas Stars and the Nashville Predators. And since it was at the Cotton Bowl, they ran with the theme of having the Winter Classic at the State Fair.
I gotta tell you guys, Doug and Dan, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think so. I think the tornado is taking us over somewhere else, like the pit of misery.
It'll be a cold day in heck before I recognize Missouri.
Yeah, so I guess we have crossed the state line, right?
We have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so welcome back to Missouri.
Lamp standards anywhere.
I hope you enjoyed your little visit into Kansas just now.
Yes, the Sunflower State. Or is that North Dakota?
It's Kansas.
Yeah.
It's like the site that was known as Foursquare now that has the app Swarm. They had one of those achievements. You're not in Kansas anymore.
I remember Foursquare.
Yeah. Before it became dumb.
Yeah, my brother was the mayor of Wegmans.
Which one?
The one near his house.
Oh. I think I'm probably
when I would come his house, I would always have to come Wegmans too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the Grandview Triangle that we're coming up on here. This is where 435 hits the southeast corner of the loop, and you have 470, which continues east off to Lee's Summit, and then you have I-49, which begins here and heads south.
Yeah, and that's a relative newcomer compared to 435 and 470. I mean, US 71 was the precursor for that, at least.
I mean, 71 does go north, mostly as freeway until it reaches a point there where it splits apart, where there was opposition to building a freeway. So the right-of-way seems to still be there, but they built the frontage roads and put 71 on it.
Yeah, so there's a series of 3 signalized intersections there. And yeah, the right-of-way exists for freeway lanes to be built. However, the residents of that general area successfully blocked the construction of the freeway through that area. Otherwise, US 71 / I-49 gets you all the way down to... Well, it's complete now as far south as
Fort Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were just in that section, too, weren't you?
I was just there, actually. I clinched Arkansas Route 549, which is future I-49.
Down south of Fort Smith?
It's like southeast of there. So it's going to kind of bypass it around that side. Because 540 kind of goes through town, and then 49 is going to be east of that.
Yeah.
Yep. And they just opened the last leg of 49 around the Bella Vista bypass a couple years ago.
Yeah. So apparently it sounds like...
Sitting there waiting for me to get done with it.
You might be waiting a while.
I think so.
Yeah, but I think that the latest, as far as 49 around Fort Smith is concerned, is that Arkansas is going to proceed with the new section of it that will connect the northern stub where it currently ends with the 40-49 junction east of Fort Smith. but they're apparently
Yeah.
only going to build it as a Super 2, so it's not going to be signed as I-49 upon its completion.
RDOT is not in a hurry to finish it right now.
Oh, no.
No. They are one of those that is just going to take their sweet time on this and just let everybody else sweat their palms.
Yeah, and of course, the section of 49 between Texarkana and Fort Smith is, that's my understanding, that's some challenging terrain to build around too. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you kind of get a little taste of that as you head north on 49 out of Fort Smith, because you have the Bobby Hopper Tunnel a short distance north of there, and there's some mountains around there between there and Fayetteville. But yeah, it's even more mountainous south of Fort Smith. So
yeah, and that section of 49 is still labeled for exit numbers like it was still the previous number. Not 540.
Is it? I actually don't remember.
Last time
happening. But
no.
And they don't really need to extend it north of there either.
No, I think it works sufficiently as it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it dumps you onto the East Loop here, which takes you up to I-70, and that's it. Or you can bypass downtown and come out on the Kansas side. So
yeah, it's kind of like going around Indianapolis, where everything, basically like I-74, you have to follow 465 around.
Except for 65 and 70, everything else.
Coming up on the eastern I-70 junction. And this is right around the area where the sports complex is located that we were telling you about.
The Truman
earlier.
Sports Complex.
Yeah.
Where the chefs and kings and queens play.
Yeah, the Royals, which were named after I think a livestock show.
Okay, then.
Is that where that name comes from?
Yeah. It was a Kansas City Royal livestock show. It's actually called the American Royal, and it's actually been around for 124 years. And it's scheduled for October 4th to the 22nd at the American Royal Complex in Kansas City. Basically it looks like, there's a barbecue competition, because it is Kansas City, and there's the Barbecue Hall of Fame, too. There's a rodeo, which I've never been to a rodeo. Livestock, so I guess it's kind of like a cow show. And they have a horse show and things like that. And it is a lot of stuff that I probably would not be too familiar with. But yeah, that's where the Kansas City Royals were. Basically, the name came from that. I mean, they didn't name it after Queen Elizabeth II.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Royals' name was a little bit of a random thing. It doesn't really.
But it works.
Yeah, I mean, it works. I think it was also some sort of a homage to the Kansas City Monarchs.
That could be it too.
Yeah, the Negro Leagues franchise there.
Quite possible.
I think that had something to do with it also. But yeah, that also makes sense too. The connection to Kansas City, rodeo and culture and that sort of stuff. Because I mean, it is a pretty big. One of the things that is the claim to fame in Kansas City from the industrial side of things is the stockyards.
Yeah.
And it still is, I think, to this day.
Yeah, because it's really a convergence of, being in the middle of America, kind of where like East meets West almost.
Yeah, I think there's more than one sign that I saw when I was out there that kind of It was kind of like a slogan, but it was along those same lines, where the Eastern, influence meets the Western influence.
Yeah.
And you are pretty much smack dab in the middle of the U.S. where you are in case.
I mean, the middle of the continental U.S. is in northern Kansas, so
yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, so that is basically Kansas City kind of industrial. Of course, the barbecue too. That kind of takes obviously all day. So we also have too. I mean, basically with Kansas City, basically coming into the I would say the northeast quadrant of basically the 435 loop. For people who like casinos, there's the Maristar Casino Hotel Kansas City, and then there is a bunch of amusement parks. There's the Worlds of Fun amusement park and the Oceans of Fun amusement park. So you even have an ocean in Kansas City, apparently. Well, I think Oceans of Fun, I want to say that's owned by the same people who own Schlitterbahn down in Texas. So that would kind of make sense. But I want to say they have this really big water slide, basically at the Oceans of Fun, which I want to say is or maybe it was, which was the tallest water slide in the United States. I just kind of want to double check. No, it's a different amusement park. Basically, but yeah, I've been to a water park.
I have too.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay for a day, but it's passive recreation, just kind of swimming by myself. Or I have a kayak too. Actually, I have a couple kayaks.
Yeah, you like that more leisurely entertainment, water-wise.
Yeah.
I just had to pause the stream here for a second because I had to. There's something weird going on with my internet connection, so I switched over to my jetpack. So we'll see see how well that does. We'll see if that does any better here.
Jetpack.
Well, that's the fancy word.
Yeah, he's a jetpack, so he can jet everywhere.
Yeah. I don't know what you dopes call them, but I call them jetpacks because it just sounds cooler.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Speaking of Worlds of Fun.
There it is.
Yes.
Yeah, so sorry for the technical issues, folks, but I we'll see if
Please
this is
stand
any
by.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
This should work a little bit better. Okay, so yeah, we're on the northeast side of the loop, and this was the part of the loop that was the last to sort of come to fruition. But that's also because it was sort of stuck onto the end as an afterthought. The northern quadrant really wasn't part of the circumferential system when it was drawn up in the 50s and 60s. And then once the other sections further south started to get built, the northern section sort of was stuck on as, sort of the last piece of a circular route. And that's the part that wasn't really built until the late 70s or 80s.
Yep. Well, they needed a highway to Oceans of Fun.
Yeah, well,
Apparently so.
I mean, every water park needs a freeway.
I agree.
Well, apparently
I
not
agree with
everyone, because I've been near water parks that have no freeway nearby. They might be a bypass freeway, but they're not right next to the freeway. Wisconsin Dells.
See, I'm all in favor of the all water parks get an interstate debate because that would mean
it is
that,
more exciting than a lot of the other debates we have.
Well, yeah, it's certainly more original.
Yeah.
But if that rule was the case, then that would mean that Fishkill would get an auxiliary interstate because there's Splashdown Water Park.
Yeah.
Just north of the village.
Well, there was a water park up near Lake George called like Water World or something like that. It's been closed, but yeah, that's another water park near an interstate.
Yeah.
By the way, Con Airport is coming up shortly.
Ooh, Con Air.
Yeah, Con Airport. That's the name of KCI, the IATA. The technical IATA code for Kansas City's airport is MCI.
We go beyond the call.
Exactly.
Yeah. How many years has it been since we saw an MCI commercial?
90s.
Decade.
The 90s, maybe.
Like 25.
I remember seeing a lot of them during the 90s, but apparently MCI lasted until 2006.
Yeah, who were they bought out by?
Oh, let me see. It was bought by Verizon in 2006 and integrated into Verizon Business.
I miss those Bell Atlantic commercials with James Earl Jones. You remember those?
Yes, I did. Yeah. And then once they eventually brought 9X in, he was on, I think, the 9X commercials too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember him on the Bell Atlantic commercials for years.
Oh yeah. It's like, well, I guess I know what Darth Vader's phone plan was like.
Yeah.
That failed me for the last time.
You have dropped my call for the last time. Oh boy!
I want to say that James.
Is that what you said to the sleeping internet?
Well, and actually, speaking of James Earl Jones, he lives in Pauling.
Yes, he does have a house.
Yes.
There,
yeah.
And he had a birthday recently too, didn't he? I seem to remember seeing that somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He's got to be like 90-something now, isn't he?
Yeah, something like that. He is just turned 92 a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
Well, of course, yeah, he was on some more. Maybe he was. I think he might have been on like a Sprint commercial within recent years too. Like it was him and another actor, and they were quoting people's conversations on the on cell phones and like texts. And he's like, "Totes my goats" or something like that. Like totes my goats. I think it was Sprint.
Well, if you think about it, James Earl Jones has had about as diverse a career as you could have as an actor.
Malcolm McDowell was the other actor in those commercials.
Oh.
They were like, a total Hottie McHotterson. Totes McGoats. Yeah, so that was those were fun commercials, but no, unfortunately they were not on as long as the Bell Atlantic commercials. And oh, nice. I just saw US 69, so I had to say nice. But speaking of highways, in the Kansas City area, going into the Twin Cities, besides US 30, besides I-35, what's the other highway that connects both the Kansas City area and the Twin Cities?
169.
Yes. So they actually, that actually is a highway that is, common for both interstates. Of course, 169 also goes, right past the bridges of Madison County.
Yeah. Yes.
And John Wayne's birthplace.
John Wayne, really?
He's born in Winterset, Iowa.
Okay.
So those that were wondering about US 69 and where it ends in Everett Lee. And yes. Nice.
And yes, the video is a lot better now.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, yeah, I figured it would be better, but I don't know if I'm not sure if there would still be any lags every once in a while. But all right, if that fixed the problem, then we're gonna roll.
Yeah.
With that. Okay. Fair enough.
Yep. Sometimes basically you're on the road. You got to do what you got to do. So.
Yeah. We make these shows up as we go anyway, but when the host is traveling around all the time and doesn't even know what day it is, then it becomes extra difficult. So
it's like I went on my Alaskan cruise last year. You go into the elevators of the cruise ship, and they actually had like a tile on the floor that would tell you which day it was. Like I looked down, I'm like, oh, it's Saturday. Wow.
Well, yeah.
It kind of makes sense with some people on the cruise ships. They are 3 sheets of the wind the entire time, so that might be the only day. It's like, oh, like today's Saturday. Wow.
Yeah, I guess if you're stuck on one of those things and you don't go ashore for any reason, you may not necessarily know.
Right, or for a really long cruise, like some people they'll take a cruise like around the world, like some of these positioning cruise, or like a cruise around like South America or something like that, which takes weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might not know which day is what. And it's like, wow.
Particularly when you're going up and down the latitudes and the length of the day is changing.
Yeah. Well, they will tell you too. It's usually like when you say you cross like a time zone on a cruise ship. They'll make an announcement the day before. It's like, we'll be changing our clocks to this different time zone. Basically overnight. Basically adjust your clocks and watches accordingly.
Most of the times, I just let it happen because cell phones.
Yeah. Well, if you're in the middle of the ocean, basically they have this. Like a satellite, they have like a marine cell phone signal, and that costs like a lot of money in roaming. So you're better off not. If you're at sea for the entire day, you're better off not having your cell phone on.
Yeah, I can see.
Anyway, so
yeah.
They got to make their money somehow.
Yeah. Well, drink packages. That's how they make their money.
Yeah. And speaking of which, 169.
Nice. Yeah, so that is basically not knowing what day it is. I know normally, let's say if I'm on a road trip, I do know what day it is because I am usually, only driving for like a week or so at the most.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting in the summer for me, but we'll talk about that offline.
Yes.
Yeah, the buffalo meat is going to be very interesting. I agree. Oh, you're not talking about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Did I say it was or not?
I'm talking about.
I don't know what I'm talking about anymore.
Well, I'm talking about Shaft. You can dig it. He's a sophisticated man, but no one understands him but his woman, John Shaft.
He's a bad mother.
Well, shut your mouth.
I'm talking about Shaft, man.
You're coming up on the completion of our lap around KC here in a couple of minutes. So,
Yeah.
if anybody
We have
had
no
any...
virtually-
The
Yeah.
169 interchange that we're coming up on right now.
Yep.
Or going through right now.
Yep. And we will have successfully clinched the loop.
Yes. A few more exits, and then we merge into 29.
Yes.
29, which begins in downtown at the downtown loop and heads up...
Out of the country.
Yeah, heads up to the border.
Yep.
Right by Omaha, Sioux Falls, Fargo, and Grand Forks.
And Sioux City, too.
And St. Joseph.
Yes.
Where it's got a nice little spur. And stay over there, buddy. And it's a nice little spur into St. Joseph that is stacked.
Yep. Well, there's a meet coming up in Omaha later this year, too.
Certainly.
I think it's the last weekend of April, right?
Yes.
That it is.
Yeah, I don't plan on going to that meet because I actually am looking at going on a different vacation around that time to somewhere else.
It's also going to be a meet in Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Yes.
I think that's going to
The
be...
I-29 corridor will have plenty of meets this year.
Yeah.
Sioux City
Virtual and in person.
Sioux City would be a good place for a meet, I always thought. Well, ever since I visited there, I'm like, this would be a great place for a meet. Yep, so that is what's coming up on the docket, and I know there's a meet in Fresno later this year as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the turnout is like for that.
Yeah.
Because it is California, and Tom's doing a multi-day thing for that, and but he's got a lot of channels that he can promote it. So it'll be interesting to see who shows up for that one.
Yeah. Well, I know that, like, in California, the way that they've talked about road meets in the past has been more along the lines of, basically just people kind of more informally meeting up to eat and then, basically checking things out. There's been a few more traditional meets in the Pacific Northwest, in Portland and Seattle, but, nothing really in California, to my understanding, or not much in California as far as meets are concerned.
Last time I did any sign of meet in California was driving up the old US 99 from downtown LA all the way up to where the I-5 flips.
Flips, eh?
Yes, where the carriageways cross over each other on the side of it.
That's what you're talking about. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So right short of where it turns off 29, you just ended.
I see.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, Scott would like to chime in on the Skype chat and say that we're lagging. Oh, are we?
We were.
I hope I fixed
Yes.
that. Okay, we'll start that in a couple of minutes. Let's regroup here.
Let's talk about Shaft.
Yeah, let's just talk about that for the next hour. Okay.
You just been shafted. Well, we got a couple 94s here. 64 or 46, however you want to look at it.
Have you had enough to drink this evening?
I guess I haven't.
I think you should have another.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I've had a lot of sugar today. I stopped at a donut place in Saratoga Springs this morning and had some very tasty but overpriced donuts.
Yeah, you gotta pay.
Well, it is Saratoga, so yeah.
Yeah.
What's the place name?
Darling Donuts. They're square donuts. they are shaped in a square, but basically, given that Saratoga Springs obviously is where the horses, where you can see the ponies race during the summer. Yeah, it's not the cheapest place.
I'll tell you, but there is a couple of places around eastern Iowa called Hertz Donut.
Hurts, don't it? Hurts. Don't it? What you can't see is me punching myself in the arm when I say hurts, don't it?
Exactly. Anyway.
Yeah. Back to the business at hand.
So let's talk about and go for a lap around the loop around Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yes, and let's have a tater tot hot dish now.
Well, you do that too. So this video again is gonna be
Ufta.
it's gonna be counterclockwise again. It's gonna start in the upper left where the red pin is, and we'll kind of go in a counterclockwise circle, starting first with the 494 portion, and then that transitions nicely onto the 694, and that's how we'll do it this time.
Yeah, don't think there's any Waffle Houses in the Twin Cities.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they go as far north as Minnesota.
Yeah, but you can get a Juicy Lucy.
You can, and I've had one of those.
Yes. For those who don't know, that's cheese inside of a burger.
Yeah, and if it's done right, it's really tasty.
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk more about food momentarily here, but let's start this video. Exactly an hour in length to cover. I think the loop here is 71 miles, somewhere about that. And again, it comprises 3 different interstates. There's the 494 and 694 sections, and then 94 is overlapped over the far western portion of the 694 segment. But we're going to begin by turning south onto 494 eastbound, and that's where we'll start this drive.
The traffic jam of the Twin Cities.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. It'll be kind of obvious when we get there.
Yeah, take it you right into it.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
But
it's not all Minnesota State birds, by the way, so don't feel bad about that.
So one of the common questions that comes up as far as the loop around the Twin Cities goes is why in the world are there 2 different interstates for what's effectively a continuous highway, a continuous circular highway? Well, it wasn't originally drawn up that way. In the 50s, when they were coming up with bypass ideas for the Twin Cities, planners originally envisioned 2 different highways that were not intended to necessarily connect with each other at each end. And so when the interstate system was created in the 50s, it was agreed that the northern bypass would have its own number and the southern bypass would have a different number. As these 2 highways continued through the planning stages, and ultimately construction began in the late 50s along 494, and then 694 came later in the 60s, it was realized that it made a lot more sense to just connect the 2 highways together and make a complete circle. And so that's what they ended up doing, but they ended up just keeping the original idea for the designations.
Right.
So you still have the 2 different numbers, which is a leftover from the original idea from the 50s.
The original idea, I think you're talking about, is the Highway 100.
Yes, that was the original.
There is only one side remaining.
Yeah, 100 exists today, but it is not. It's not, part of the loop anymore.
No.
It was originally supposed to be the western leg of the loop.
Right.
but obviously things happened, and now it isn't necessarily part of that. But yeah, so you have the Highway 100 discussion, which we can have next week, and then obviously, again, just to sort of recap, that the interstate designations here are the leftover remnant of the original routes that were planned in the 50s. And would it have made more sense to consolidate into a single highway? I suppose, but Minnesota didn't want to tempt fate with mass confusion and all that stuff by just eliminating a number or renumbering stuff and all that stuff. So they just kept the two numbers as they are, and that's how they exist today.
Yep.
And when they talk about actual bypass for 94 itself, for obvious reasons, they try to direct all the trucks onto 694.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And 494 actually has a separate legislative route number, which is 393. But they don't actually mark that number along the actual highway. It's a legislative route number of the Minnesota statutes.
Yep.
Yeah, and Scott is correct that through traffic entering the Twin Cities Metro is directed to use 694 as the bypass. And a big part of that reason is because 494 goes through much heavier populated areas. As we'll see coming up here, there are several additional points of interest along this highway that you don't have on the 694 section. The 694 is much quieter by comparison.
It's also more direct, too, if you're trying to follow 94.
Yeah, that's true, too. Yep. If you're staying on 94, 694 is significantly shorter.
Yep.
The legislative route that you talk about covers both interstates, Doug.
So it is kind of technically, in a sense, one route number, but only in legislative terms.
That's correct.
Yeah, learn something new every day.
So we can actually tell people, we can actually tell our fans that, see, there is actually a single route number for the Twin Cities Loop. How about that?
Yeah.
It's a secret,
it just pulls the Florida.
Yeah, Florida, Georgia, whatever other states you want to throw in there, yeah.
Yep, so that was... that was news to me, but things that you'll find along 494. Of course, the big one is the Mall of America in Bloomington, and the thing with the Mall of America, we'll be passing by it later. But before I forget, remember when we did the Atlanta Beltway, and I was talking about Pascual Perez driving all around the interstate?
Of course.
Well, the old Met Stadium or Metropolitan Stadium, where the Twins and I think the Vikings used to play, basically was in Bloomington, and there is actually there are some basically some tributes or remnants to where where different parts of the old stadium where there's in the Mall of America, there's a red seat on the wall marks where Harmon Killebrew hit the longest home run out of Metropolitan Stadium. The home plate was 522 feet away, and apparently the Metropolitan Stadium home plate is located in the Nickelodeon Universe part of the Mall of America.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the chance to visit the Mall of America when I was in town, and one of the reasons why I went was to seek out those landmarks inside that amusement park area that they have. And so if you don't know the story behind the red seat, it's one of the more random things inside that enclosed space there. It's just like a red chair on a wall, but it's there, and it's the tribute to the Harmon Killebrew home run. There is a marker it's randomly placed. Like, you have to know where it is in order to find it. But there's markers for home plate at the Met, and there's a marker for the 50-yard line when it was in its football configuration. So yeah, you can find all these little nuggets of sports history inside this central amusement park, and it is like a full-scale amusement park that they have, like right in the middle of the Mall of America there. But if you go there and you kind of walk around, you'll see these little markers on the floor, and then there's obviously the red chair on the wall there, and it's kind of neat, actually.
I pasted a link to a blog that contains pictures of this for those that are curious.
Yeah, I'm gonna incorporate some of my pictures of that stuff into the PowerPoint for next week.
Yep. And my understanding is that looking at the map, the southern road that basically the road that passes by the Mall of America to the south is Killebrew Drive.
Yep. Minnesota's favorite baseball player.
Well, they've had some great ball players over the years too.
They have.
Kirby Puckett, I do remember quite a bit.
Yeah, he might be the favorite of them all. Yeah, may he rest in peace.
Kirby Puckett.
Yep.
Yep. Then Tony Perez, which I think he was just he just went into the Hall of Fame last year.
Okay.
It's another one. And there's a few more that obviously have passed through the Twin Cities over the years. Of course, Minnesota is also the state of hockey, and a lot of your favorite hockey players probably have spent some time driving along 494 or 694.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up hockey, because I also wanted to mention, as far as Bloomington is concerned, that's also where the Met Center used to be.
Yeah.
And that's where that's where the Minnesota North Stars played.
Both the arena and the stadium existed where the Mall of America is now.
Yeah, it was kind of like
the Met Center was north of where the stadium was, where the mall is now, and now that both of them are gone, you got basically in retail areas in both areas, in both spots. I think that's an IKEA that's north of the mall.
Yeah, I think the IKEA sounds familiar. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, so that Minneapolis had its own sports complex that was kind of similar to the one in Kansas City, similar to the one in Philadelphia, where they had all their teams play, out, in the suburbs. But obviously that's changed over the years. Now you have stadiums in downtown Minneapolis for the Twins and the Vikings, and now the Minnesota Wild
Timberwolves
play,
and Wild.
The Wild play in St. Paul.
Yeah.
The Timberwolves play right across from where the Twins play.
Yeah, they do.
And of course, that's just the, basically the pro sports. I mean, also in Minneapolis, you have the University of Minnesota, so they have the, basically the
Gophers.
Yeah, the Gophers there, and they play football. Well, I guess it's the Huntington Bank Stadium now. I wanted to call it TCB Stadium or something like that. And of course, you also have, being a big hockey area, you have, a lot of hockey arenas too.
Yeah,
hasn't Minnesota hosted the Winter Classic at some point?
A few years back, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I would think that would be a perfect place to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they put it in Target Field.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Target.
And I think they played the Blues or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe the Blackhawks, one of the two.
Yeah, I got to go to Target Field for a game last summer. That was a fun experience.
Yeah.
Shortly, we're coming up on 2/12. also known as Minnesota 5, 212, the east end of what would eventually become the Beartooth Highway as it goes west.
Yes. Of course, there's a lot of real estate you have to cross between the Beartooth and Minneapolis, though.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Just a
all of South Dakota, for instance,
and Wyoming, and Montana,
it does,
and Wyoming again.
It does clip Wyoming a little bit, so.
Yep, it does. But mostly it's in Montana and South Dakota and Minnesota.
Yeah.
But you come on the more busy areas of the highway, mainly Eden Prairie, Bloomington, Shakopee is actually south of there, but there's other municipalities in this area as well. Yeah, I am going to be posting a link shortly to a site regarding an upcoming construction project that's going to do some extensive building between in here and the airport split. First starting with a Easy Pass Minnesota lane set between a couple I-35 and W and a point Minnesota 100.
Yeah.
And they're also going to put a turntable ramp in from west to north on I-35W, and then build a bunch of bridges and combine Portage and 12th by east of 77.
Yeah, so this
is going to be a multi-year effort, and slow effort too.
Well, it sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's actually going to start at 169.
Yeah, so the section that Scott is describing is known as the Bloomington Strip, and that was the first section of 494 to see construction. I believe it started construction in 1958. So it was very early. It's a very early design, very early interstate, and it really hasn't been touched all that much since then. I believe when they built it, it was just 2 lanes per direction. They've added a 3rd lane to it, but that's about it. Like, most of the original interchanges are still there. The interchange with 35W is a cloverleaf disaster that has been needed
Cloverleaf capital of the United States. That's how I look at Minneapolis and St. Paul.
You know, I'm very surprised that there's so many of those interchanges still around in a place like this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, too, there's also, to me, when I look at a map of the Twin Cities as compared to other, like, metropolitan areas, I want to say that the Twin Cities probably has some of the highest number of freeways for a metro area in the U.S. Yeah, definitely seems like it when I look at the maps.
It's up there. Like, freeway mileage... in terms
within the metro area.
Yeah, like I don't know how you could quantify this, but like freeway mileage per 100,000 residents or something like that.
Yeah.
Or something. There's got to be a metric out there along those lines. But yeah, I would think that the Twin Cities would be near the top of that list.
We'll definitely go more over the rest of the freeways in this next week.
Well, we're
coming up on Bloomington now.
Yeah, so now we're entering the Bloomington Strip section.
Home of Best Buy is the headquarters.
I didn't know that Best Buy was based there. Is that here. Right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, all right.
Best Buy was headquartered here. Target's headquartered here.
Delta has a hub.
It has a hub, but it's not the HQ. It was the HQ of the airline that Delta bought, yes.
Yeah, Northwest, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I-35W. That sounds a lot like Dallas-Fort Worth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just clinching 35W in Texas earlier today.
MSP Airport has been a regular connector for me when I was much younger.
Yep, the United Healthcare, they're based in Minnetonka.
Needless to say, I used MSP Airport as an origin airport for a recent trip.
Yeah.
There's the Best Buy HQ.
Yep.
Oh, that's it.
And,
Okay.
Yep. And who else is based in the Twin Cities? You have a lot of health.
Bank?
U.S. Healthcare, U.S. Bank. You have a lot of healthcare companies. Buffalo Wild Wings.
B-Dubs?
Yeah, they're based in Minneapolis.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I pulled up a list, and I will share it.
Before you share, notice the as you went through the video, nobody respects Des Moines in Minnesota.
No,
Albert Lee, this little town on the corner of 35 and 90, is the control city for 35.
Wasn't Al Franken from Albert Lee? I think so.
I don't know. That explains it.
Well, he's from somewhere in Minnesota. I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he grew up in Albert Lee.
Oh,
Thank you, Wikipedia. But yeah, so there are a lot of companies that are based along the the 494 and 694 corridors. Like so that is. No, I don't want to sign up. There. Yeah, it's like, oh, sign up to continue reading. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that.
Of course not.
Oh, boy.
Portland and 12th Avenue here, by the way, is part of that project. They're going to take out the 12th Avenue exits and just put them all on Portland.
Yes, General Mills and has a big big presence in the Twin Cities, and Pillsbury. They came out to Minneapolis years ago too. I know that, like, for instance, before the Twins came to Minneapolis, or in Minnesota, the minor league. There's a minor league team. I think it was the AAA franchise for then the New York Giants. They were the Minneapolis Millers.
77 here is one of the major roads to go to Mall of America, by the way.
Yeah, the mall would be on our right at this point.
It would be if you wanted to look behind, to the right of the screen.
Yep.
Speaking of General Mills, there is down in Northfield is the Multi-Mule factory.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit south, about halfway down to 90 on one of the state routes there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got the Mall of America that we just passed, and then you have MSP on our left.
Which you're passing underneath a runway now.
Yeah, so you can kind of see why this stretch of 494 is the busiest part of the whole loop. Because you have... yeah. Well, the idea of a bypass is to bypass all of this stuff, not be a hub for all of it to be located on. But that's not really how it worked. It kind of worked in reverse here.
Yeah,
but in American history, post 1950, you see this a lot with the planning of these, outer ring highways, where a lot of times that's where the development just focuses on, because people don't want to deal with the downtowns and getting in and out of those, so they'll just put their corporate headquarters.
Speaking of Stanley, hello.
Hey, it's me. Hi, I'm
Yay!
Woo!
What's up, stranger?
We picked up a hitchhiker.
I'm hanging out with my other neurodivergent friends tonight.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you get to spend your time with them.
I do. I'm very, very happy to. And I just wanted to call in because I love and miss y'all. And I hope you're having a really good show tonight without me.
Well, we navigated some internet issues earlier, but other than that, it's been okay.
Okay.
But good to hear from you as we pass the Minnesota River here, which is the mile 0 point on the loop. But I hope you're doing well. And did you have anything you wanted to say as far as Minnesota roads are concerned, or are you saving that all for next week?
Saving it for next week.
All right, well that's fine. I respect it. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, I wanted to pop in. Like I said, love you all. And I will see you on the show next week.
See you next Saturday. Take it easy.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night. I told you guys she would call in at some point, but
Yes.
I didn't know when it was going to be. So
You did. Yes, you did.
Anyway.
And then we dropped her off in the Minnesota River.
Yeah, sorry. See, that shows that we really
That's
think
okay.
of her,
That's the cleaner river.
Yeah, yeah. And I know with the Minnesota River.
Mississippi River.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Mississippi River is probably about as clean as the Minnesota River, at least up in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, where there's no shipping channel yet.
Yeah. Well, is it the Mississippi navigable up to
It is.
Minnesota now?
Yeah, there is a lock-in dam in downtown.
Yeah, you can make it up to Minneapolis, yeah.
But
Not
it's
that-
quite narrow.
Yeah, not that many
Yeah.
boats make it up that way. I don't know that barges go up that way. I think that the furthest north they go is St. Paul, but yeah, you can get craft going up that far. The other thing that I really liked about the Mississippi River and the Twin Cities is how well kept it is.
Yeah.
They've really gone out of their way to beautify the whole riverfront from, like downtown Minneapolis all the way down the line to St. Paul. And it's really beautiful.
Yeah. I remember when I visited Minneapolis the first time, I walked across the Mississippi River on the old Stone Arch Bridge, which is a pedestrian bridge now. And that was really neat. It's like it's kind of like walking, and then basically you have the city skyline in front of you.
Yeah, that's a great spot too.
Yep.
I think that was built as an old railroad bridge.
Yeah, I believe
Right?
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It goes back to like the 1850s, maybe 1840s,
something like that. Yeah.
I gotta sharpen up on my notes for next week, but yeah, I think it dates back that far.
Yeah. So that you have, of course, me with waterfalls. You have not necessarily. I think there is the St. Anthony falls there, but I know that there's also the mini Minnehaha Falls or something like that.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And apparently it's basically it kind of there's like a channel that kind of feeds basically the waterfall, so it's always going to flow.
Yeah, because one of the lock and dam systems there bypasses that waterfall area there, but yeah, they do ensure that there's a flow of water into both.
Yeah.
All right, so where are we here? We're approaching.
We just passed 35E, so I think we're coming up on 149.
Yeah, we passed the 35E interchange. We're approaching US 52.
Yep.
And then
Minnesota 3 first, and 52 will be shortly after that.
Yeah, and then shortly after US 52 is the bridge over the Mississippi River.
The Wakota Bridge.
Yes.
Yeah, so the name Wakota comes from combining the names of the two counties on the either side of the river. There's Washington County and there's Dakota County. And then they made the name Wakota out of that.
Yep.
And that bridge was built back in the 2010 era and widened out, rebuilt completely.
Yeah, I think the Wakota Bridge, the original one, was built around the same time as the original Bloomington Strip in the late 50s.
Yeah.
And then they replaced the bridge about about 10 years ago, something like that. So that the bridge that you cross now, that we'll be crossing momentarily, is not the original bridge. It's the replacement bridge from about a decade ago.
Right. I've been on both the original and the replacement.
Yeah, I heard the original wasn't very fun.
No, not by any means.
Yeah, a little cramped.
There was only 2 lanes each way at the time.
Yeah. Oh, was it really?
Yeah, the 3-lane didn't really come until closer to 35E and 5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it has been really built up every time. It's like, even still substandard, as you noticed.
Yeah.
And hopefully this next coming up project does the right thing and builds it to like 4 or 5 lanes wide on each road. But we'll just see, because there's not much room to expand anymore.
Yeah, there's not much room, but you're right that there needs to be a lot of expansion of capacity in that area. And the other thing that they really should look into is, the Twin Cities, they have a lot of freeways, but their interchanges suck.
Yeah.
So
that's the problem. Is they got all the clover leaves there.
Yeah, it's basically all clover leaves still around the metro.
Yeah. Yep. And they're only like replacing 1 ramp at a time.
Yeah, so it's gonna be like the Jane Byrne interchange in Chicago, where it takes 10 years to replace. Which
interchange?
Or whatever.
Which interchange?
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It takes them 10 years to replace 4 ramps or whatever.
Yeah.
When are they going to be done with that, by the way? Aren't they? Isn't that supposed to be soon, when they're finally done with the circle interchange?
They're practically done now.
Yeah.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah, they finally decided to finish it.
Well, I'm really proud of IDOT. Good for them.
Idiot.
I'm glad they decided to, finally wrap things up after, a decade of job security there.
Yeah.
That's what we call it in the engineering construction realm. If a job takes that long, hey man, the way you look at it is this: it's a job. It keeps you employed.
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah, so if I got on one of these New York City projects that are coming out soon, I'm set until I'm in my mid-40s. That's not bad.
Yeah,
I was already set since my mid-40s.
Well, you can look at it that way too if you like. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of you don't need me to tell you this, but there's a ton of construction that needs to be done, on highways all across America, like in all of our cities. So
Brooklyn Queens Expressway.
The bill is
that's the one that I was kind of alluding to before. Yeah, with
yes,
the replacement or whatever the hell they're going to do with that. That's a 10-year program, just there.
Yeah.
So
well, the bill is coming due on all the infrastructure that was built originally. So
yes,
you're going to be quite busy for a while getting everything up to code.
Pretty much the entire area.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our country's infrastructure, in all of our cities, it was all built around the same time, like 50s, 60s, 70s.
Sometimes even earlier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Depending on what you want to examine, yeah, it goes even further back than that. So you have, the fact that all this stuff is reaching the end of its useful life, and then the other issue that I'm running into personally is that we have a significant shortage of people. We can't find people to work, and part of it is because of the retirements of the baby boomer generation, but a lot of it is because people aren't going into engineering like they used to, and people aren't interested in inspection like they used to be. So it kind of goes in 2 different directions. One way to look at it is that someone like me suddenly becomes that much more valuable to a staff, which is nice, and until you realize that I just got saddled with a lot more responsibility that I likely wouldn't have otherwise if there were a lot more good people in the field to work with. So what all this adds up to is that I likely will not be out of a job ever, and I will be a well sought out commodity.
And hopefully well compensated too.
Well, yeah, I mean that too, you know.
Yeah. You can take it in any way you want.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how you look at it, I mean, we're kind of, you know, we're kind of in a pickle as a country because we built all this stuff around the same time, and now, predictably, because of how life cycles work, all of this stuff is at the end of its life cycle at around the same time. So we have to kind of build everything back again, and this time around we don't have the personnel with which to do that. So now you have all sorts of questions about, you know, it's not just funding, it's also personnel and how you're going to staff these projects. So
Begin 694 and 494.
Yeah, so while I've been on my soapbox here, we've reached the end of the 494 loop at the east end of the loop at the eastern I-94 junction. This is where 494 ends and 694 begins. So we're transitioning from basically 494 eastward to 694 westward, even though the sign says 694 north right now. That'll change to 694 west shortly.
Yep.
Yeah, but we will not be leaving legislative route 393.
Hooray!
No. Yay! And one could have put Madison as the next city, but they respectively put a better sized city than Albert Lee in Eau Claire on there.
Well, you know, Claire too. I mean, you can continue in 94 towards Madison, or you could go on 29 out towards Green Bay. So it's a
wait. There's another city before Green Bay.
Wausau.
Yeah.
Chippewa Falls, where the Liney Lodge is.
Yes.
Yeah, so on one of my cross country trips that I made with my mom between Oregon and New York, we stopped at the Liney Lodge, which is the Leinenkugels visitor center.
Yes.
In Chippewa Falls.
Yet
that's a nice.
Here
That's a nice
on
looking town.
694, you got two lanes going this way.
Yeah, so I mentioned before that 694 is the quieter side of the loop. And perhaps now you're kind of seeing where I got that from. You don't have the suburban sprawl out in this area that you had along most of the 494 section.
Not as extensive as the Bloomington area.
Yeah. I want to circle back to Minneapolis cuisine because we kind of teased it before. Doug, you were...
Hot dishes?
Is that what
We're talking about a tater tot hot dish.
Yeah, so what is a hot dish? For people?
It's another word for casserole.
It's like a Minnesota style casserole.
I think it's just another name. It's just another name for casserole.
Oh, they just call it hot dish.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to post a link as foods Minneapolis is known for. So the Juicy Lucy, which we were alluding to earlier, which is a burger with cheese inside.
Yeah, so it's like a cheese stuffed burger patty.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can wash it down with a Grain Belt or Northeast beer. And then there's a lot of Scandinavian food since Minnesota was settled by a lot of people from Scandinavian countries. So you have your lefse, pickled herring, Swedish meatballs, and I think you can get a lutefisk hot dish as well.
I would imagine that's where the inspiration for the Minnesota Vikings name came from.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my great-grandmother was born in Minnesota, but she was Irish and German. She was from She grew up. She was born in Otter Tail County, Minnesota, which is kind of near Fargo, and then she eventually wound up in Oregon.
Well, she got around.
Yeah, there's a story behind that. I might have mentioned before about the whole hoop skirt incident, where basically the people that my great grandmother grew up around, they followed the pastor from Ohio to Wisconsin and Minnesota, then out to Oregon. Apparently, this guy, this pastor, liked to whack the knees of people with a hickory stick because wearing a hoop skirt. And some of the parishioners said, this guy sucks, and they stay in Ohio. The other people, they seem to like the pastor for some reason and followed him all across America. Apparently, the pastor was also basically... when he passed away, they buried him in one place. They eventually moved his body and casket out to Oregon from Minnesota. So if I ever wrote a screenplay for a movie, it would probably be that story.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
You talk about casinos in Kansas City. We forgot to mention that there is a casino in the Twin Cities vicinity. It's southwest of Bloomington, Mystic Lake Casino Hotel. And you'll probably see plenty of signs. You'll probably have seen plenty of signs both in the Mall of America and on the road about that. It's in Shakopee, somewhere in the middle between Minnesota 13 and US 169. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so going back to food, which is probably more exciting than casinos. Well, you can get food at a casino.
You can.
They usually have some good. They usually have some good restaurants.
But anyway.
Yep. So another thing is we've mentioned the Minnesota State Fair before. And the my understanding is a big thing for people to get the Minnesota State Fair is a bucket of chocolate chip cookies from this place called Sweet Martha's. Apparently, that's the big thing in Minnesota at the Minnesota State Fair.
Right.
Oh, and you can also get. We see what else can you get in Minnesota. There's a stew called the Booyah. Booyah.
Booyah!
Booyah. It's a thick stew believed to originate in Belgium and then somehow wound up in the upper Midwest.
All right.
But, wild rice is the other, another common food that you might be aware of that, came from Minnesota. Actually, I had a wild rice soup a couple weeks ago, so.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
We'll be coming up on US 10, 61, and I-35E again. I-35E back in the aughts, basically 2001 to 2008 in that range, was basically a big weave into 694. So you had a bunch of less exits, and people had to cross over each other in order to get through on the respective highways. And in the aughts, they unweaved that weave. So basically, they took the left exits and put them on the right.
And that was actually the name of the project, Unweave the Weave.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was $120 million.
Oh, quite a bit for that time, too.
Yeah, for that.
Well, they probably needed it.
It was a total of 3 interchanges that got unweaved.
Yeah, because you'll see as we pass through it that the main lanes of 694 and the main lanes of 35E come together, and they do kind of, blend into each other. But back in the old days, it was even more pronounced.
Yes.
Where it just kind of, all these lanes got dumped in one place, and then if you wanted to stay on one highway or the other, you had to jump across the whole roadway
Exactly.
in order to stay on the same highway. So this arrangement, which was a very, I mean, I guess it was a good idea back in 1960, but it doesn't work for today's standards, and so that's where that's where the new configuration came about.
Uh-huh. And the current end of US 61 is pretty much it ended in Wyoming, Minnesota. You crossed it prior to 35E, but it goes north of that and goes quite a bit, but it got truncated to Wyoming. It used to go all the way up to the Canadian border.
Yeah, isn't that where Minnesota 61 comes in?
Yep.
So that used to be the old U.S. route, right?
Yeah.
Oh, north of where 35 ends.
North of Duluth or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see on the end here, that's coming from 35E south, I believe, right? Yeah. Nope. That is actually 35E traffic coming in on the left from the north.
Yeah, I think
And
it was
then
the
it
other
exits
way.
to the south.
Yeah, it was the other way
Then it
around
exits to the
originally,
south.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, like it used
Correct.
like
it was
30
coming in from the right, and it had to cross over, while 694 had to cross over to the right in order to stay on the highway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they just kind of.
And that's the maze that they pulled apart.
Yeah. So that the way that they rebuilt it makes a hell of a lot more sense than it was originally built as. But
Yes.
yeah.
And I think you've noted a few places have figured that out over the years. Like the original way they designed the freeway, it was like you're looking at it a more modern scope. It's like, okay, what were they thinking?
What were they thinking, indeed?
Yeah, and part of it was that they weren't expecting the traffic volumes that they got ultimately.
Right.
So that these what we would consider to be antiquated interchanges, they would work just fine under 1960s traffic, but they don't work when you add another 100,000 vehicles to the equation.
Yeah, it's like the old Can of Worms interchange in Rochester, New York.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, that's a classic. And even the new one is kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, when I was a little kid, we actually went through the Can of Worms, the old interchange, but I don't remember it much. So
yeah, that was before my time. I think when I went through it, it had just been rebuilt. But yeah, I remember. I have family who live in Rochester, and I know that they have talked about the old Can of Worms configuration as if it's like this big, as if it's like the Lake Erie monster, it's this big scary thing.
Yeah.
So
now I remember when I was in college, basically making the trips out from Oswego for a garbage plate. That by that point I was going through the new version of the Can of Worms, which still didn't make a lot of sense, but still made more sense than what it was before.
Yeah, because those two roads, 590 and 490, they don't cross at a T. They cross at more of an X. So
right.
That complicates it geometrically anyway. And then, you factor in the amount of traffic that goes through there, and it's a very weird spot in New York State. The 590 is full of weird spots. I think the 590 is where they built the first DDI in New York State, right?
Yeah, at Winton Road, yeah.
Yeah, so 590 is not a stranger to weird occurrences or weird interchanges.
And then you have to look at 104 as well.
Yeah, 104, just a bit north of there, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's something I can actually write about someday if I really want to. So I could.
People will say whatever they want, but I miss the old kamikaze curve in Binghamton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of New York interchanges.
I remember that. Yeah.
Can we
the
come back
old
to
one
Minnesota
quite
for a
yeah.
bit?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you want to talk about
yeah.
Minnesota again? All right, fine.
I certainly do, because we're coming up on another area that was a victim of the 60s, and particularly was the original Highway 100 concept that got rebuilt completely. 10, 35W, and 694. As you can see here, 694 got reduced to 2 lanes briefly, and yet at the same time, on the other side, on the sides of this interchange, greater interchange between the 3 highways, it's been wider. But they rebuilt this in 2010 to 2013 and cleaned it up quite a bit, like they did with Unweave the Weave. But there wasn't not that much weaving going on. It was just very inefficient interchanges connecting major highways, which is pretty much a theme around this area, obviously.
Yeah, if you haven't picked up on that already.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So
This is the 35W again, and
Yeah.
again, this is another cloverleaf.
Not so much.
Yeah, it surprises me with the amount
Yes,
of
it is.
freeway mileage that we have, and with the amount of traffic in the Twin Cities, that there hasn't been a greater push to. I don't want to say go so far as what Texas has done, where they put a 4-level stack at every interchange.
Every single spot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the opposite of Texas.
Yeah. It is. It does surprise me a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we would think that they would have finished the project and replaced that interchange in some way, but Minnesota didn't really want to spend the money.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is something that, basically, maybe because Minnesota's been putting so much money into just building the highways, they, upgrading the interchanges were kind of put on the back burner.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They, like I said before, on the other side of this beltway, they do it one ramp at a time.
Yep.
I mean, for example, 77, where the mall is, they have one turntable lamp. The rest, and then they also have the same direction in a cloverleaf format in order to catch more traffic coming from the mall. So it's like redundancy. That's another thing about the Twin Cities, is there's a lot of redundancy ramps in the area, and you can tell on both 694 and 494 that they exist.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for redundancy and stuff like that, until it starts to become a problem with merging and weaving movements and stuff like that. If you put too many ramps in a concentrated area, that's a recipe for trouble.
Yeah.
That's disaster there, yeah.
Yeah, so and we did see that as we were heading down across the 494 there, where those are the original interchanges from the 50s.
Exactly.
They thought that all those ramps were going to be just fine, but by today's standards, no one would ever build a highway like that. But yeah, so you have to address all of those things eventually, and Minnesota has been slow to address the interchange side of the ledger. They've not been slow in addressing the actual freeway construction. Minnesota's actually been quite advanced as far as that's concerned. I mean, we look at the Twin Cities, from a mileage standpoint, they're right there with most of the other big cities in America. But they lack, they have a lot of catching up to do as far as exchange points for traffic. And so those are predictably the places where traffic is the worst at peak times.
I'll tell you this, another one called a can of worms, or whatever you want to call it, is in Duluth. They're completely, this is not Minnesota for you. They're actually really completely rebuilding that interchange. And as a result, they basically gutted out all the bridges, all the approaches and everything, even the bridge across the river, the Blatant, is going to be completely replaced.
Yeah, you're talking about that interchange. Yeah, that's why. That's actually why I didn't go to Duluth on this trip, because the construction is such a mess up there right now that they actually have it right now so that you can't clinch I-535 because the west end of it, from the end of the bridge on into the US 53 I-35 interchange there, is closed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. For me, it didn't make any sense to go up there, even though it is on my list of things to see at some point.
Yeah, and I would say even Duluth is very very neat. But I will say if you're in that area, keep on going north on 61 for a while. That is also
the North Shore.
Interesting.
Yes.
On the North Shore, you get some tunnels. You get for me, I'm also big on lighthouses too, and waterfalls and things like that. So you got the Split Rock Lighthouse, which my understanding, maybe that's changed, but that was the lighthouse on the Minnesota driver's license.
I don't know.
Well, I remember taking a tour of the lighthouse, and that's what they told me. I mean, they said it may have changed over the years. If you go on that, you'll see, like at the upper left-hand corner of the driver's license, you will see a lighthouse, and that is the Split Rock Lighthouse, and I will send a link to that as well. So, and of course, they have some trees and things like that.
Yep, of course, lots of trees, and
especially up that way. Yeah,
94 has joined the 694, and 100 has left 694.
Yeah, so we kind of passed through a big Mixmaster interchange there, where 94 comes in from the south out of downtown Minneapolis and joins the loop for a few miles here before it heads off towards St. Cloud and Fargo.
Where 694 just basically just piddles off, and 494 goes off.
Yeah, so I believe this is still considered part of 694.
It is.
I don't know that it is signed in all places.
It is.
It
is.
Well, it's signed on the freeway, on the overhead signs. I don't know that they do as good a job signing it from the intersecting roads, but...
we're going to find out in a minute unless that truck gets in the way.
Yeah, well, here's a 694 shield here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yep. I think it's... Yeah, I always figured that it was signed on the freeway itself. I just wasn't sure about, at interchanges, how they signed it.
They do.
From the local roads. But, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So... they really do this for consistency's sake, right? Just to kind of say, okay, this is the northern loop, and we're going to call it 694 as a result, and then everything south of here is 494.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so we are going to be wrapping up this lap around the Twin Cities in a couple of minutes here, so if anybody's got any questions, comments, concerns, any last minute things that they want to add to the discussion, now's a good time to do that.
Yeah, and we
were told not to forget Moorhead, by the way.
Well, somebody has to tell me what Moorhead is.
Fargo.
It is the other side of the Red River of the North from Fargo.
Oh, okay.
And if you haven't done so already, smash that like button.
And subscribe if you haven't done so.
Subscribe to the channel. Tonight's show was a little bit of a roller coaster where we had to, navigate internet issues, but I think we got it figured out. But we always do as good a job as we can with these live shows. Yep. And a lot of times we kind of make things up as we go, so that's another reason to tune in, because you never know what you might see
or hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Prince yet either.
No, we never got in a Prince reference, did we?
No, but I heard a lot of artist references.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always something exciting to hear about on these, the live streams. So,
Yep. Nice.
Yep, US 169 is here.
Nice.
I'm very appreciative of Doug for giving me a new podcast episode to listen to. So that's a good thing.
I might have to try to churn one out tomorrow too.
Okay, you thinking about any topic in particular, or?
Well, I just kind of came up with one on the fly this morning. There's been a few podcast episodes I'd like to produce, but I just have to do the research. I'd like to do one on FDR and roads at some point.
Yeah.
Because FDR was actually when you think about it, he's actually probably more instrumental in various workings of the U.S. highway system than you might first realize too. So
yeah, a lot of that stuff was born in the Depression years. Yeah.
Yeah. But there are some other things too. It's like I've always been on this covered bridge kick, so you might see more covered bridge stuff from me, or just whatever comes to mind. I was just thinking, I should do something on US 2 in Washington, and that's what I wound up doing for a podcast today, just kind of out of the blue.
Yeah.
I just noticed I-94 is exiting off itself here.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the exit number is for the loop. It's not for the 94 main line, is it?
That is correct. You can't even count how many times I-94 exits off itself.
Yeah, didn't we have this discussion recently?
Last week.
About interstates that...
Yeah, last week.
Yeah.
About I-90.
Last week, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually I-90 that exits off itself many times.
Right.
Yeah, 94 just kind of, and you'll hear more about this next week, but it definitely weaves its way through the Twin Cities.
Weaves, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a drive if you try to follow 94 through the downtowns. Yeah.
I've done it, yeah.
Yep. All right, well, gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight.
Oh, that's a
Helping
good
me
question,
out.
Mr. Opinion. Wasn't 94 the guest of 694? I would say yes.
Yes. And it's a long way to St. Cloud from here, or maybe a short, long way. Yep, that's the next stop. That's the next destination on 94 West.
Well, yeah.
Bigger than Albert Lee, I can tell you that.
Yep. St. Cloud, anyways.
What did Mr. Lee do to deserve all of this dislike? I don't understand.
Be small.
Poor Albert.
Yep.
Well, we will be back next Saturday.
Definitely will.
For our show, and we'll see how many people we can get on the Skype call for next Saturday. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It's always interesting when we try these big ass Zoom calls that we usually, I think last year we got like a dozen people on the call, and then what did we do last? We did Hartford last year, I think.
Yeah,
Hartford,
not exactly all at the same time, but still.
Yeah, and so like I was trying to, like we had a dozen people trying to like get a word in, and I'm trying to like fight my way through, talking about stuff. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see if we can come up with a more streamlined way to make sure that everybody can get their words in here.
Buzz in like Jeopardy.
Yeah, we might have to. I have to come up with a buzzer.
What is
or
Doug
something.
Kerr?
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll figure that out for next Saturday. And
Yeah.
So thank you again to my co-hosts Doug from GribbleNation.org and Sconson from... You have a website, Scott, or not really? What are you doing?
I don't have a true website right now.
Oh, all right, so you're a slacker.
You did at one point.
I did. It died.
Yeah, all right, well...
R.I.P. May your website's memory be a blessing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope you found this episode useful, so thank you all very much for watching, and I encourage you all to check out all of our recent or past episodes. We have a webinars playlist on my homepage. We also have a virtual tours playlist there that you can check out. We've done over 100 different live episodes since 2019, and they're all there, archived, for you to go back and rewatch in case you haven't seen any or all of them. So if this kind of thing suits you, I definitely recommend that you do that. Till next time, wish you all, continued health, safe travels, and we'll see you next Saturday for our next live show. Until then, have a good
Au revoir.
one. Take it easy.
Yes.